Okay, Rogue and Cleric fans, get ready. Today, we are building a holy assassin, a hand of the divine, or maybe an inquisitor, who does the dirty work of their religious order so that the priests can, theoretically at least, keep their hands clean. And it might be the best rogue I've ever built. Welcome to D4. Hey everybody, so here at D4, every week I take a deep dive into one specific character build for my favorite role-playing games, usually D&D. I like to theorycraft about them, I like to crunch numbers about them, not so that I can tell you the right way or the best way to play a character, but to explore one potential way to build a character in the hopes of creating something that's both really fun, but also really powerful to play. So if you also really love creating characters for your favorite role-playing games, or if you're just really into theory crafting, or if you're looking for tips or ideas on how to build something that you're thinking about playing, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I am so glad that you're here. So thanks for being here. My name's Colby. You know, I think of all the buffs that various subclasses got with the 2024 rules updates to D&D 5e, one of my very favorites is the change that we saw to War Clerics. They are so much better in the 2024 rules than they were in 2014, and it's primarily a result of the change to the key War Cleric feature, War Priest. This is the thing that lets you take a bonus action attack on your turn, right? It got a couple of really big buffs in 2024. It used to be that you could do it wisdom modifier times per day, per long rest. Now you can do it wisdom modifier times per short rest. And it's hard to overestimate how much better this is. At most tables, based on what I've read and seen, and even polls I've conducted, most parties are having 1 to 3 combat encounters per day on most adventuring days, with usually a short rest if you're having more than one, right? So assuming that an encounter lasts for 3 to 5 rounds, which I think it typically does for the majority of us most of the time, this change to War Priest means you can pretty reliably get a bonus action attack on most, if not all, of your turns, when you want one, for most, if not all, of your combat encounters, and that is freaking awesome. But the thing that actually made me jump out of my seat when I first read it several months ago, right, is the subtle little change that says we no longer have to take the attack action first before we make that bonus action attack. That was just so dang restrictive. So now, sure, you can cast a spell and still get a bonus action attack. But of course, the first thing that I thought of was, wait, now I can dip War Cleric on my rogue and get sneak attack twice per round. And I was so happy. So yeah, I put that pretty near the top of my to-do list and was planning on putting a build together for it a little over a month ago. But then my buddy Kobold over at Outtakes put out a great video on doing this very thing. Check it out here if you haven't seen it. And so when I saw that come out, I felt like I had to wait a while so that we weren't just putting out videos on the same idea, right on top of each other, right? But I can wait no longer. Enough time has passed, and I want to build this character because it is going to be awesome. Now, longtime viewers of my channel know that I love to build rogues around this little trick, right? Because yes, sneak attack can be triggered not just once on your turn, but once on a turn, meaning that if you can get an attack on someone else's turn, so long as the attack otherwise qualifies for sneak attack, you can use sneak attack again, triggering it twice per round potentially, and that means that, holy cow, rogue's damage might just be able to keep up with other damage-focused builds. Yay. But yeah, I remember, I think it was on the Berserker Lurker build up here quite a while ago, bemoaning how few ways we used to have, anyways, to actually get a bonus action attack that wasn't tied to taking the attack action first, because one of the easiest ways to double up on sneak as a rogue would be to make a bonus action attack, then ready your action to attack on another creature's turn, right? But so often, any bonus action attack we get to make is tied to first taking the attack action. Because this bonus action attack is not tied to taking the attack action first, we now potentially have one more way to do this very easily. Of course, there is a little downside to all this, and it's that clerics no longer get their subclass at level 1. 1, right? So it is a much bigger investment now, 3 levels to get to this War Priest feature. So the question is it worth it? We'd be giving up 2d6 of sneak attack scaling plus delaying other rogue features to get sneak attack a second time on a round. Well, I think it's worth it, but why don't we build it out, dive into the numbers, and find out for sure. I'm super excited to share with you then D&D episode number 199, the War Rogue, the Cleric Assassin, the Crucifixer, I like that one, the Holy Executioner, the Inquisitor, Assassin's Creed 2.0, the Holy Hitman, the Hand of the Divine. I love that. I am so in love with Leliana, but not everybody's gonna get that reference probably. Thanks as always to the Discord members for the fantastic suggestions. I think today I'm gonna go with the one suggested by Discord user Daniel, the Holy Blade. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for the artwork that he put together for this build. He does this every week. I especially loved this one. I think it captures the feel of what I was going for so well, but I'm realizing, looking at it again, that maybe the reason I love it so much is because I think it kind of looks like me. Or maybe what I want to look like, I suppose. Anyways, if you'd be interested in following Randall to see the other stuff that he has done, or to maybe even reach out to see if you could commission him to create some art for your character or your entire party, I'll put links in the video description, as always, on how to do so. Okay, everybody, it is ASMR time. Check out these awesome jammies that I got for Christmas. Aren't you jealous? Let me tell you guys a true story about my Helix mattress, the sponsor for today's video. A few weeks ago, I was out of town for a few days, and by the end of the trip, my lower back was really hurting, like it always used to before I got this mattress. Insert joke about being old now. I got home, I slept on my bed for one night, pain gone again. Here's another true story. I had a cold last week, and I spent a few nights sleeping in a different bed so that I wouldn't keep my wife up with my hacking and sniffling. While doing so, every night I got so hot in the middle of the night that I had to throw off the covers. Last night, though, feeling better, I came back to my lovely mattress and I slept like a baby. Cool and comfortable with blankets, even. It is a miracle. So yes, Helix mattress makes the best mattress that I've ever owned. I've had it for about 6 months now, and I can honestly say that I love it more today than when I first got it. So, in case you didn't know, before you even order a mattress from Helix, they have you take a sleep quiz to help you figure out your body type and your sleep preferences so that you can get the perfect mattress for you. I took the test before I got my mattress, and I got matched up with the Sunset Luxe mattress, but there are 20 unique mattresses that they offer, including the Luxe and Ultra Premium Elite collections, the Helix Plus for big and tall builds, and even Helix Kids, designed for people who are still growing. With mine, they also included a Glaciotex cooling cover because, as I mentioned, and in the quiz I tend to sleep a little hot, and it really does make a noticeable difference in helping me stay cool. So listen up. Right now, at the time of this video release, Helix is having a limited time New Year's sale. Go to the URL that I've put in the video description and the pinned comment to save 27% off your mattress purchase, plus 2 free pillows. And don't forget, they have a 100-night sleep trial. So order one, you get more than 3 months to test it out and see if you like it. If you don't, send it back, get a full refund. So there's really not a lot to lose here. Their mattresses also have a 10-year warranty, and they even have financing options and flexible payment plans if you decide you do want to keep it. Oh, and shipping is free in the US. It comes rolled up in a box. It's super easy to set up. Anyways, yes, as a reminder, when you do check them out, please use the link that I've put in the description, the pinned comment, not only to save money, but also that's how they know I sent you. All right. Big thanks to Helix Sleep. I really appreciate your guys' support, both financial support and sleepy time support. All right, let's get back to the build. At level 1 for our starting class, anytime I'm going to be taking rogue levels, I generally like to start rogue, since you can get really most of what makes a rogue good at being a rogue with just a single level, and starting there gets us one more proficiency for added utility. It's not necessary though, and you might prefer to start your character's story as a cleric and get some medium armor and shield proficiency and spells, right at level 1, and then maybe have something happen to your character, whether a calling from their higher ups in their church, or maybe from their god, or some sort of tragedy that makes them turn from their faith that pushes them to take rogue levels later. Personally, I envision our champion as someone who maybe starts their life as a shady character, part of a thieves or assassin's guild, or maybe a smooth-talking con artist, who then has some sort of brush with the divine and decides to change their ways and get religion. Or, perhaps better yet, they're recruited by a religious order because of their roguish skills. This church has need of someone who is a believer, but who can do their dirty work for them, similar to my true love, Liliana, the Hand of the Divine, right, from Dragon Age fame. But anyways, as for our species, I think that I would most favor human for this build. Humans uniquely get an extra origin feat, and there are a couple that I really want to have. There's actually 3, but I'll settle for 2. The first we're going to get from our background, and for this build, I'd either do an old or custom background as usual, or in our case, I'd probably take Wayfarer, as that gives us the ability score increases that we want, and one of 2 origin feats, namely Lucky here, which tells us that we have a number of luck points equal to our proficiency bonus that we can spend every day to give ourselves advantage on a d20 test, or to give an enemy disadvantage on their attack against us. And while many have complained that this feat got nerfed for 2024, for rogues specifically, it's arguably better, since while sure, waiting to see if a roll fails and then spending a luck point to re-roll it like you could with the old feat is usually better, the rogue's sneak attack works only under certain circumstances, right? One of those being that you have advantage on the attack. So if your chosen enemy isn't standing next to an ally and you don't otherwise have advantage, well, thanks to Lucky, we can, at least a few times per day, get ourselves like sneak attack on demand and thus have a nice fallback, right? Of course, Lucky also gives us advantage on saving throws or gives an enemy disadvantage on attacks against us, but for this build, I think I might be using it more often than anything to give myself advantage so I can get sneak. The other feat I want is one that's quickly becoming my most used one for 2024 builds, I think. Magic Initiate Wizard, which we would grab thanks to being a human, so we could learn a couple of cantrips and a first level wizard spell. For cantrips, I'd probably grab Booming Blade if you can use old material from 2014 rules at your table, or True Strike if you can't. And remember, when you take this feat, you can choose what your casting ability score is for the spells. It doesn't have to be intelligence just because it's Magic Initiate Wizard, right? We'd be choosing wisdom if it matters, as it would in the case of True Strike at least. And then for the other cantrip, I think I'd go Message. I just love having the spell on a rogue so that I can communicate back to my team if I'm scouting ahead, right? For that first level spell, yeah, I think I'd take Find Familiar so that I could have a little pet owl who can scout for me, and scout for a scout, and hopefully give me advantage on my first attack on my turn. As for our ability scores, I'm going to assume we're going point by method as always and say let's grab a 15 dexterity, take a +2 there, a 15 wisdom and a +1 there, and then a 14 constitution. I think getting a high wisdom here is more important even than constitution. Rogues especially want good perception so that they can find traps and hidden doors, but also as a cleric we will benefit from that wisdom score as well. For starting equipment, make sure you grab a rapier and then either studded leather or scale mail and a shield. Now, you're not proficient in shields or medium armor yet, but you might want to start wearing it at next level. It would make your AC better, though you'd have disadvantage on stealth checks, in scale mail at least, so kind of up to you. Studded leather with our +3 dexterity is only 1 less AC than scale mail would be, but once we can get half plate, it starts to feel a little more significant, at least until you can max out your dex score, right? Which we won't be doing for a little bit on this build, so yeah, you choose. I kind of like the idea of a moderately armored and shielded rogue instead of your traditional leathery skulker, personally. And with expertise, which we get as a Rogue One, that lets us double our proficiency bonus in 2 skills that we're proficient in. Maybe having disadvantage on stealth checks wouldn't be so bad if we chose stealth as one of our proficiencies to have expertise in. But yeah, I'd probably take stealth, and then I think perception here, though I would love to have sleight of hand as well. We also get weapon masteries here at Rogue One, 2 of them, and I'd for sure take the rapier as one, and then probably a thrown or ranged weapon of choice, dagger or a dart, probably, I'm thinking. As for the rapier, yes, it has the Vex property, which I love, telling us that if we hit with a weapon, the next attack we make before the end of our next turn, that's important, not just until the end of this turn, right, will be with advantage. Again, super important for rogues especially. Now wait. Why aren't we dual wielding with a Nick weapon here, you might ask? The answer is simple. The bonus action attack that we will get as a War Cleric only allows for a single attack with our bonus action. And since we'll be readying our action to strike, well, 2-weapon fighting with 2 light weapons only gets us an extra attack if we're taking the attack action on our turn. One of those things that I bemoaned in the preamble, right? We're not doing that. And hey, I mean, shields are good. We're going to be a fairly tanky rogue here. And that's cool. We also get Thieves' Cant at Rogue One, which is the special coded language that rogues can use to communicate with each other. And then, yes, Sneak Attack, which says that when we hit with a ranged or finesse weapon, check, and the enemy is either within 5 feet of an ally of ours, or we have advantage on the attack, check, hopefully, right? Then we can add an extra d6 of damage on our hit once on a turn, and yes, this scales with rogue levels. Really quick, before continuing, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my channel members. You guys, I literally would not have a YouTube channel if it weren't for you. Thank you for your support. It means so much to me. If you're not a member of the channel, I'd love it if you'd consider joining. There's a button down there that says join. You click on it and it tells you all the benefits that you can get by being a member. And in case you didn't know, I've recently made a change so that anyone who's silver level or up, that's like $1.99 a month, gets access to all of the perks that I offer. My hope is that people will pay what they think it's worth, if they want to pay something. And yeah, that includes access to the library of write-ups that I do for each of these builds to help you recreate the character yourself a little more easily if you want, access to the community Discord server, and access to the live monthly Q&A hangout sessions that we do. If you're not really interested or don't feel able to become a member, that's fine though. I appreciate you just being here and watching and liking and subscribing and all of those things. So thanks for doing that. Okay, at level 2, now that we've got our rogue foundation in place, let's get some cleric levels. That means we'll be a cleric 1. We're going to gain medium armor and shield proficiency, so now we will be a little beefier, at least with a shield if you don't want medium armor for now. And then we get the new divine order feature, which lets us choose between being a protector, granting us martial weapon and heavy armor proficiency, neither of which we really need. We don't have the strength for heavy armor, right? Leaving us then with the thaumaturge option, which is nice. It lets us learn an extra cleric cantrip and lets us add our wisdom modifier to our arcana or religion checks, which is wonderful since we probably dumped intelligence, further improving our skill monkey utility capabilities, right? As for the spells that we should consider at cleric 1, I would plan on taking the usual suspects here. Guidance for, yeah, even better utility, helping ensure success on ability checks, right? Adding a d4, whether for us or for our friends. And then, yeah, cure wounds or healing word, maybe both. With the scaling on cure wounds, there's actually reason to consider getting both now, I think. But then I would grab Bless. It is such a great buff, adding a d4 to all attacks and saving throws for multiple party members. If I were playing this character in game and no one else was planning on concentrating on Bless, I might just concentrate on this spell like every encounter for the entire campaign. I'm not going to be making that assumption when I crunch numbers because I'm always trying to explore the limits of what's possible damage-wise when I'm building for damage, right? But yeah, this is such a great spell. At level 3, we would be a cleric 2, and that means we get Channel Divinity, which can be used twice per day, recovering 1 use on a short rest to do one of 2 things for now. Divine Spark lets us heal another creature, not ourselves, within 30 feet for a d8 plus our wisdom modifier, or deal that much force damage to them if they fail a constitution save, a half damage on a save. I think I'd only use Divine Spark in case of emergency, personally. Turn Undead is still here as another option and lets us force undead within 30 feet to make a wisdom save or be frightened and incapacitated and move away from us until they take damage. I hope you get to fight a lot of undead in your career. At level 4, we would be a Cleric 3, and that's when we get our subclass now, and we are going with War, as I've said, and I just love this subclass so much. Up until recently, I really loved it conceptually, but not so much in practice. In fact, if you can believe it, I only ever have used War Cleric one time for a single build in all of my 2014 rules builds, all 170 something of them, right? It was the War Priest. Check it out there if you haven't seen it. They were kind of a burst damage dealing, but then support build that I was really pleased with. Actually, I think it worked really well, but yeah, I think they're so much better now. First of all, War Clerics still get the fantastic guided strike, which is another way for us to use our channel divinity that doesn't suck unless you're fighting undead. Yay. It says that when we or a creature within 30 feet of us misses an attack, we can use our channel divinity to add 10, yes, 10, not a d10, just 10 to the roll, potentially causing it to hit. Unfortunately, we have to use our reaction for that, and our reaction is largely going to be taken with the ready action, right? But not always. I'll plan on using this once, at least at level 6. But then there is the lovely and amazing War Priest feature, which says that yes, wisdom modifier times per day, Wumpser. Wumpser. It's not quite the same as just blowing a raspberry for proficiency bonus. Times per day. Anyways, we can make one attack with a weapon or an unarmed strike. No other restrictions here. So regardless of what we've done with our action, we can make a rapier attack here, and if we otherwise qualify, apply our sneak attack damage to the hit. Sweet. We also get second level cleric spells, and War Clerics here get Guiding Bolt, Magic Weapon, Shield of Faith, and Spiritual Weapon for free. Some potential usefulness there, though Spiritual Weapon unfortunately got a big nerf in that it costs our bonus action still and our concentration now. I won't be planning on using that, thanks. Aside from those spells, I'd still plan on taking the usual suspects. Aid for a bump to the max hit points of multiple party members, Lesser Restoration for a little cure-all, Hold Person, of course, is phenomenal if you're fighting humanoids to potentially paralyze them. Warding Bond is like my favorite tanking spell of all time, letting us increase an ally's AC and saving throws by 1, and then splitting damage with them when they take damage, right? Might be nice if you want to lean into being more of a protector cleric assassin. And then I'll just mention enhanceability here too. If we're really trying to be like super skill monkey, giving advantage on ability checks with a single ability score of our choice, right? Dex, wisdom, strength, etc. for an hour can potentially be really nice. But at level 5, with our most important cleric features secured, I think we gotta get back to rogue to start ramping up that sneak attack damage, among other things. Meaning that we would be a rogue 2 here, and at this level we get cunning action, which lets us take the hide, dash, or disengage actions as a bonus action instead, which is super useful, though hopefully we won't need it that much since we'll be wanting that bonus action for attacks. So many uses for our resources. But then at level 6, we would be a rogue 3. This gives us steady aim, another cool feature that we probably won't use much because, again, it requires our bonus action. Fortunately, we shouldn't need it though, right? Because it lets us use our bonus action to get advantage on just our next attack this turn, so long as we haven't moved and then don't move after, which can be fairly debilitating. Unless we're on a mount, since there's no like regulation against our mount using their speed to move us around, right? So I have to say, it seems like trying to attack while mounted would make it even harder to take steady aim, not easier. But oh well. Most importantly, at this level, we get our subclass. And I was actually, admittedly, kind of torn on what to do here. On the one hand, I think Arcane Trickster is an obvious and fantastic choice. It would let us get more spells and increase our spell level scaling, albeit at the slow 1/3 caster pace. And there are plenty of useful and awesome wizard spells to choose from as an Arcane Trickster, right? Even if we dumped our intelligence, especially now that spell choice for Arcane Tricksters isn't restricted by spell school, right? It's so good. That said, when I did that first assassin expose video right up there, it felt like, man, the assassin could be so much better with a little multi-classing, you know? But since I was sort of doing a first look at the 2024 assassin thing, I felt like I needed to do just like a straight class assassin build so that we could explore all of their features, right? And ever since, I've wanted to do a more thorough, like optimized treatment on them, seeing how much better they'd be with a little multi-classing. I know I used them in the Gun Fu Monk last month as well, but that character wasn't built around the assassin. It was more like a, I guess will be an assassin kind of thing. It was primarily meant to kind of be a Gun Fu, Kung Fu, monk gunk, and just benefited from sneak attack, right? And besides, judging by the numbers, none of you actually watched that video anyways, so it's like it never happened. So let's do a better optimized assassin for our character today, shall we? As an assassin, we get the really fantastic assassinate feature, which is really 2 features in one. First of all, it gives us advantage on initiative rolls. That is really great, since the second feature, surprising strikes, says that during the first round of each combat encounter, we have advantage on attacks against any creature that hasn't taken a turn yet. And if we land our sneak attack during that round, not turn, the target takes extra damage equal to our rogue level. I've said this multiple times now, but I think they should have doubled the amount of damage that this does. Fortunately for us, we just might be able to double it if we can land sneak attack with our reaction and our enemy still hasn't gone yet. So yeah, winning initiative is super important for us. So important that I'd consider dropping the lucky feat, I think, for the alert feat. It would pain me to give up easy, on-demand advantage when we needed it, but maybe between our familiar and the Vex weapon mastery, we'd be okay. Keep in mind, Vex gives us advantage on the next attack we make before the end of our next turn. So if we make an attack with our bonus action on our turn with advantage thanks to our familiar, if it hits, well, the next attack we make, ideally for us with our reaction, right, not on our turn, will be with advantage. And if that hit lands, well, the next attack we make will have advantage. So that's the great thing about Vex, especially for those of us who are only making like one attack at a time. It gives us the potential to just sort of keep advantage going constantly, right? But if we miss, we're gonna want something to fall back on to give us advantage still. Anyways, we do have advantage on initiative, and we are prioritizing dexterity, so hopefully that will be sufficient for initiative purposes. But alert is definitely worth considering, especially if no one else in your party has the feat and can potentially swap with you if you get a really bad roll, right? Don't forget that sneak attack does scale here up to 2d6. Oh, and maybe let me just mention, if you are planning on being the bless bot for your party and no one else is casting it, then yeah, I probably would go Arcane Trickster for sure. If you're casting bless, you want to be doing it on round 1, and that doesn't jive very well with being an assassin, right? Since as an assassin, you want to be hitting as hard and as often as possible on round 1. I mean, I guess you could wait to cast bless until round 2, but that feels like you'd be missing out on a lot of the spell's power. And hey, scaling your spell slots more quickly as an Arcane Trickster so that you can upcast bless and affect more targets would be really nice. Anyways, at level 6, it is time for our first damage report. Let's talk about what combat ideally looks like for us here. On round 1, we would be running up to our target who hasn't taken a turn yet, right? And using our bonus action to make a weapon attack thanks to War Priest. We'll have advantage, and so we'll trigger sneak attack if we hit. We would then ready our action to cast Booming Blade or True Strike against them with our reaction. Remember, if you're using True Strike, it requires that you use your spellcasting modifier to hit and to damage, but at the moment, both our wisdom and our dexterity are only at a +3, so no big deal, currently no difference, right? Also, now that we are past level 5, that cantrip spell will do extra damage plus the weapon's damage, so that's better than just making a weapon attack. I wish we could do it as a bonus action too, but the bonus action that we get from War Priest specifies that we just make a weapon attack, not cast a spell. And yes, since we're making a weapon attack as part of casting the spell with Booming Blade and True Strike, it can still trigger sneak attack if we otherwise qualify. Now, as for what the trigger should be that will cause our readied action to go off, please be sure to discuss this with your DM. Technically, I think you could just say, the trigger is when my turn ends. But I can see some DMs pushing back on that and wanting something more substantial, more specific. So maybe as soon as another creature makes a move, or my target appears about to do something, etc., right? On subsequent rounds, it's kind of gonna just be rinse and repeat. We should be able to get advantage on our turn thanks to our familiar and or Vex if we hit with our last attack, and then advantage with our reaction thanks to either, again, Vex, or spending a luck point if need be. We won't be doing the extra surprising strikes damage on those rounds, of course. And let me actually add this. Sometimes people complain about my use of familiars. Rules as written, the familiar is supposed to go after you, and they just give advantage to like the next attack made against an enemy. I think most tables just let you kind of choose who the advantage goes to, but I appreciate that not all tables do. With this build, even rules as written, it might work better than ever, right? If the familiar goes after you, maybe your trigger can just be, once my familiar has taken the help action and my turn ends, that's the trigger that causes me to, cast Booming Blade with my readied action. Something like that, and then, yeah, you'd have advantage on that attack. With the first attack that you make on your turn getting advantage either because it's round 1 and you're an assassin, or because the reaction attack that you made most recently hit, and so you've got Vex advantage, or you're spending a luck point, right? Lots of ways to get advantage here, and it should work pretty easily. Now, on every round after round 1, we're not going to be doing the extra surprising strikes damage, of course, and on one of those rounds, we will have to forego a reaction attack, since with a +3 wisdom modifier, we can only do the bonus action War Priest attack thing 3 times per short rest, and I always average damage over a 4-round combat encounter. On that round, then, just cast Booming Blade with your action, leaving your bonus action free to use Cunning Action, or cast Healing Word if need be, or even Steady Aim maybe, etc. I will assume, for fun, that we can use our Guided Strike Channel Divinity on that attack if need be, though, since we will have our reaction free. Yes, for fun. But, under those assumptions, against an enemy with a 10 armor class here, we would on average do 34 damage per round, and against a 15 AC, it would be 30 DPR. And admittedly, that's not amazing compared to other sustained builds I've done to date for 2024. It's very near the bottom at this level. #roguelife. Wait, I thought you said this was like the best rogue you've ever made. Yeah, even when we're getting sneak attack twice on a round, and that kind of bums me out. But as always, let's keep some things in mind. First, these other builds that I'm comparing to were all made to try and maximize sustained damage, so at least we're not dead last. Also, we had to take a significant detour into Cleric, half of our character levels so far, so we paid that price early to set ourselves up for more damage later. A straight rogue dual wielding with the dual wielder feat and a nick weapon like our Soul Knife rogue build, I think I'm out of cards. If I am, that's what the thumbnail looks like. That build might be outpacing us now, but they were making 3 attacks per turn. Even if they were only getting sneak attack once, it had scaled a little more by this level. And so yeah, they were in a better place. But from this point on, we are going to start outscaling a lot of builds, so just hold your horses. And hey, we've also picked up a lot of nice potential support features, and we're decently tanky, and we're still a pretty great utility character, so we have got a lot going for us, and it is only going to get better. Trust me. All right, at level 7, we would be a Rogue 4, and that means we finally get our first general feat. And there are just so many great half dexterity feat options to choose from, and we want one so we can get our dex to 18, right? Too many to pick just one. I would love to have Mage Slayer. It is so good. Skulker is fantastic. I'd even consider Poisoner for thematic reasons, if nothing else, but it's pretty bonus action dependent, so it doesn't work great for this build. The one I think I would most seriously consider for this build, if I were playing it in game, would be Medium Armor Master, actually. It would let us get a +1 to our dexterity and to our armor class, letting us have as high an AC as if we were wearing plate armor, and in a few levels, that disadvantage on stealth in medium armor isn't even going to matter. I'm really kind of falling in love with the idea of this tanky assassin cleric. It really does feel maybe a bit more like an inquisitor type, right? To me. But perhaps somewhat boringly for many of you, yes, in the name of damage overall, let's see what happens to the numbers when we take Piercer. It's not a big damage increase, but probably a bigger one than we could get from any other half feat here, letting us once per turn reroll a 1 when we do piercing damage. And remember, sneak attack rolls will count as piercing damage for us since sneak attack does the same damage type as the weapon we use, and then also lets us roll an extra d8, the rapier's damage, right, when we get a critical hit. It's not a lot to our average numbers, it really isn't. So again, if you would rather take Mage Slayer or Medium Armor Master or Skulker or whatever else, then sure, go for it. I mean, heck, I almost went Elf on this build and took Elven Accuracy, despite protests to the contrary, but I just really wanted 2 origin feats, really wanted 3. Anyways, At level 8, we would be a rogue 5, and that means we get a slew of wonderful things. Uncanny dodge, which lets us have the damage of an attack against us. Super nice. Using our reaction. Son of a... yeah. I mean, we are bonus action and reaction jammed on this build. No question. Gosh dang it. It is okay. But let me just say, I mean, it's okay. Again, having more choices of things to use our resources on is not a bad thing. It's frustrating when you can't do everything you want, sure. But I mean, options aren't bad, right? They're good. We also get one of my favorite new features for rogues in 2024 that I wish were a little better. Cunning Strikes. It's awesome. It lets us sacrifice one of our d6s from sneak attack when we do sneak attack damage to do something extra. I just kind of think that WotC should have allowed us to do the extra thing for free. At least like, I don't know, dexterity modifier times per day or something. Or given us more sneak attack dice. But that's me. As for what those extra things are, Trip can force a large or smaller target to make a dexterity save or be prone. Withdraw lets you move half your move speed without provoking opportunity attacks. And Poison forces a constitution save or gives the target the poisoned condition, which, remember, means they have disadvantage on their attack rolls and ability checks. Not a bad thing to do if you think they've got a decent chance at failing anyways. The con save, it might not be a great chance, but for some enemies it will. And the DC is based on our dexterity, so we've got a good DC. Don't forget sneak attack gets a bump here to 3d6 as well. Now, at level 9, I've got a damage report coming up, and I want to do something to give me a slight damage bump. Rogue 6 would give us another round of expertise, which is great, but going Cleric 4 here would give us a feat, letting us bump our dexterity to 20, and I like that a little bit more personally. If you want to stay the course with Rogue, go for it. I am going to cap that dex. So yeah, just bump it up to 20 here. And so for our level 9 damage report since last check, we've bumped our dexterity twice now, which is awesome. Picked up a little increase from Piercer, a couple more points twice on round 1 to our surprising strikes, right? And added a d6 to our sneak attack, which again, I'm assuming we will be doing twice per round. We've also added a bit of utility and defensive options along the way. And so against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would here do 47 damage per round on average. And against a 15 AC, it would be 43 DPR. And that's a decent increase. Call it almost 50% better at middling enemy armor classes and up anyways. Compared to other DPR builds to date at this level, we're gaining ground. Call it middle of tier 2 instead of competing for dead last. Okay, that's nice. And good news, it's going to keep scaling well, so let's stay the course here. At level 10, we would be a rogue 6, and that means, yeah, we get another round of expertise. I'm just going to say PYF here, pick your favorites. If I didn't get sleight of hand before, I'd grab it here for sure, and then maybe investigation or insight or acrobatics to avoid grapples. You choose. At level 11, we would be a rogue 7. Level 7 is like my new favorite rogue level. We get evasion first up, letting us take 0 damage if we make our dexterity save against fireballs and things like fireballs. Half damage if we fail. That's so good. And then we also get reliable talent much sooner than we used to, telling us that if we have proficiency in a skill that we can make a check for, and we roll lower than a 10, then it just counts as a 10. So guess what? Having disadvantage on stealth checks due to medium armor really doesn't matter now, especially if we have expertise in stealth, which I would think we would. We would never get lower than a 23 in that scenario, regardless of what we roll, and I love that so much. So for those who have been wanting to wear medium armor, especially if you took medium armor master as a feat, I have no concern about the disadvantage that we would have on stealth checks now. It should be said that with a capped dexterity, our AC with studded leather would be the same as it would in half plate, right? Unless we took medium armor master, so yeah, it's especially good in that scenario. Anyways, our sneak attack gets a bump here to 4d6, and don't forget character level 11, Booming Blade, True Strike, they get bumps as cantrips, right? Booming Blade does 2d8 extra damage now on a hit. And 3d8 if they move, though I'm not assuming that they are. We're not really doing anything to encourage that. At level 12, we would be a rogue 8, that means we get another feat, and you know what? I mean, sure, instead of bumping dexterity at Cleric 4, take another awesome half dex feat there and then take yet another one here, right? To cap it at 20 now. Not a bad idea. There's lots of good dexterity half feats. But part of why I wanted to rush dexterity to 20 is so I could focus on bumping wisdom after. We really like wisdom. It's good for saves, for perception and insight, for our heals, and our cleric spell DC, and will actually even give us a little damage bump, since if we took it to 18 here, which I think I do, it would mean that we could make a bonus action attack 4 times per short rest, meaning I no longer have to assume that once per encounter we're not doubling up on our sneak attack. And while sure, you might want to use a bonus action to Healing Word, or Cunning Action once in a while, or use your action to cure wounds for that matter, or cast Bless, right? As always, I'm interested in exploring the limits of what's possible, and this lets me stretch those limits slightly, in addition to giving us other benefits that we'd probably want anyways, right? Right. At level 13, we would be a Rogue 9, and as an assassin, that means we get Infiltration Expertise, which, I mean, when Wizards of the Coast backpedaled during the Unearthed Arcana process and kept Rogue subclass progression the same as it had been, right, instead of bringing it in line with other classes, so you didn't have to wait from level 3 all the way to level 9 to get your next subclass feature, right? That's how it originally was in Unearthed Arcana. And I mean, I get why Wizards of the Coast did this. They really wanted the new rules to be backwards compatible with the 2014 stuff, and if they didn't keep the subclass feature progression the same, that would have been a little tougher. But I also get the complaints, and nowhere do I feel it more than level 9 Assassin on this build, because Infiltration Expertise lets us unerringly mimic another person's speech or handwriting, which might be useful once in a while, depending on your table, depending on your campaign, but might not ever come up ever, really. But then it also does still let us move after we use Steady Aim, which, yeah, for this build, probably worthless. So it kind of feels like we waited 6 levels to get next to nothing, and that's a big bummer. But hey, at least we do get another bump to sneak attack here, taking it up to 5d6, and again, for those of us who are getting sneak attack twice per round, that's kind of like getting an extra 2d6 of damage, and that's happy. And it's just in time for our next damage report. Since last check, we have increased sneak attack by 2d6 or 4d6 per round, right? Increased our surprising strikes by a few points, bumped our wisdom so that we can get that reaction attack every round, potentially. Got an extra d8 from Booming Blade, and picked up some really fantastic utility and support and survivability potential. So, when we take the average damage over 4 rounds, now against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would do 75 damage per round, and against a 17 AC, it would be 70 DPR. Okay, that's better than a 50% increase since last check, and really goes to show, I think, how sneak attack damage scaling really looks like pretty good if you can reliably get a reaction attack. Compared to other DPR builds that I've done to date, at this level, we're more like top of tier 2, maybe even bottom of tier 1. And I love how the numbers for this build just keep getting better and better every time we check in. So let's see how it looks coming down the home stretch. At level 14, we would be a Rogue 10, and Rogues get like a bonus feat at 10, which feels awesome, and I think I'd probably bump Wisdom here to cap it for the same reasons we took it to 18, honestly. I mean, sure, most of us might get a short or long rest after most fights, and most fights might only last 3 or 4 rounds, but then there are always exceptions, right? And having more bonus action attacks if we need them is great. Not to mention all the other benefits we get from having a capped wisdom. If you'd rather take something else, maybe bump your constitution, or maybe even take resilient constitution, then go for it. Which, I mean, I should say, if you're the party's bless bot, you should have done that a long time ago, right? Or warcaster, or both. But anyways, at level 15, we would be a Rogue 11, and that means we get improved Cunning Strike. This is a new feature for 2024. This just lets us use 2 of our Cunning Strike options when we deal sneak attack damage instead of just 1, though we have to pay the cost for each. And I again find myself feeling just a little underwhelmed by this, if I'm being honest. I'm not sure why they couldn't have let us use like 1 option for free, at least maybe by this point, right? And like pay the cost for the second if we wanted. That feels like a much better level 11 feature. Or, I mean, heck, give us the better Devious Strikes here, which lets you do amazing stuff like Daze, Blind, and even Knock Out Cold. Normally, we don't get that till 14. Give it to us here, and then at 14, maybe let us like reduce the cost of one of our options by a D6 and pay the cost for a second if we want. I don't think either of those things would be particularly overpowered, personally. Anyways, we do get another bump here to Sneak Attack, taking it up to 6d6. At level 16, we would be a rogue 12, meaning that we get yet another feat. And to be honest, I'm a little stumped on which route to go here. I think if I knew I would be playing this character at this high level, maybe especially if I started at a high level, right, then I wouldn't have just bumped dexterity back at cleric 4 and would instead have taken another awesome dexterity half feat like mage slayer or skulker or medium armor master, and then another one of those at rogue 8, delaying the wisdom bumps so that I would be capping it here now. As is, kind of want to just say PYF at this point, but I mean, sure. I generally assume that we're able to use older content when I do these builds, as I think the vast majority of those using the 2024 rules are doing, as Wizards of the Coast intended, and in that case, I'd maybe just grab Fighting Initiate here so I could learn a fighting style and grab Dueling. It's a damage bump at least, if a fairly minor one, letting us add 2 damage to each of our rapier attacks, essentially making our D8 rapier the equivalent of a D12 weapon, which is kind of cool with one hand, right? If I didn't do that, I'd probably be looking to increase my survivability or utility or both. Let me know in the comments what you would want to take at this level if you followed the build as is thus far. Skill expert for extreme skill monkeyship? Why not? But then finally for us, at level 17, we would be a rogue 13, and as an assassin, that means we get the pretty decent envenom weapons. This says that when you use the poison option of Cunning Strike, the target takes 2d6 poison damage when it fails the saving throw against poison, and that this damage ignores any resistance to poison damage. Now, one thing I didn't do a great job of mentioning when I talked about this feature with that original assassin reveal video is the fact that this damage can potentially keep ticking every round. When we use the poison Cunning Strike option, they're potentially poisoned for 1 minute. They make a saving throw when you first hit them, and then if they fail, they make a saving throw at the end of each turn to try and end the poisoned condition on themselves. So now, when we first try and poison them, giving up a d6 of sneak attack damage, if they fail, they'll take 2d6 poison damage, but then if they fail their save to end the condition next round too, they'll take another 2d6 of poison damage, right? And this will continue so long as they keep failing that save. The question is, how do I account for this when crunching the numbers? They get a Constitution save. We're level 17. I mean, several enemies just outright have immunity to poison, but even those who don't, can I say that they have a 50% chance to be affected by this? I have an advanced copy of the new monster manual. There are 7 CR17 monsters in there, with an average Constitution save of 8.5. Our DC here would be 19, so yeah, that would be about a 50% chance of failure on average. Of course, 3 out of the 7 of those CR17 monsters have immunity to poison. But also, it's not like we're only going to be fighting enemies whose CR matches our level, right? I know. Only 2 of the CR16 monsters have poison immunity, same with CR15. Here's hoping that someone can put together a spreadsheet soon on all of the monster stuff so that we can kind of get a good feel for the average resistance and saving throw per CR. Should I be that guy? That feels like a lot of work. Maybe, we'll see. Let's just say this. We've got a 50% chance for the initial poison to work, meaning we'd give up a d6 of sneak attack for 2d6 poison, right? So that would double the d6 damage-wise, but then only half the time, meaning it's a wash mathematically, right? And then a 50% chance of the initial 50% who failed, so 25% chance that they take another 2d6 on subsequent rounds. This is overly simplified, but it's also not going to have a huge impact on numbers, even if that assumption is off by a little, whether because the enemy died before they could take the damage again or whatever. I want to assume something, and this feels close enough. 25% of 2d6 on rounds 2 through 4 is only less than 2 points of total damage per round on average. Anyways, we get a bump to sneak attack here, taking it up to 7d6, and we get our final bump on Booming Blade or True Strike as well, so Booming Blade's 3d8 now on a hit. And let me just add this here as well finally. If I were planning on taking this character to level 20, I'd probably skip Cleric 4 and stay Rogue so that I could ultimately get the very nice Assassin capstone at Rogue 17, Death Strike. It says that when you land sneak attack on the first round of combat, If the enemy fails a con save, then all of the damage against them for that attack is doubled, including modifiers, etc. And if we can sneak twice on that first round, yeah, that's a ton of potential burst. The Constitution save kind of sucks, but when it works, it would be amazing. But here we are then at our final damage report. Since last check, we have bumped our sneak attack by 2d6 again, added a smidge of assumed poison damage from envenom weapons, added some damage on round 1 from surprising strikes, gotten a little bump from the dueling fighting style if you went that route, gotten another little bump from a booming blade or true strike increase, and as always picked up some nice utility, support, defensive, and even control and debuff options. We are in a super awesome place. And against enemies with a 10 armor class, we would on average do 104 damage per round. And against an 18, it would be 96 DPR. So yeah, we broke the century mark on a mostly rogue character. Compared to other sustained damage builds to date, at this level, we are firmly into tier 1 and not even at the bottom of the tier either. And boy, do I have a lot of things to say and a post-mortem analysis here, so let's get into the final thoughts. The tier score for this build, if you take the damage that they do at each of the 4 damage reports for each enemy armor class we calculated for and just average it into one big number, we end up with a 56, which at the moment is right at the top of tier 2. Not a bad place to be. But of course, the reality is that it took us a bit to ramp up, right? At first we were kind of just scraping the bottom of the barrel, but maybe my favorite thing about this build is the way that they just got better and better and better as they leveled up, scaling more consistently and rapidly than almost any build I've done to date. And what this tells me, more than anything, is something I suppose that I've already felt to be true. If you really want a rogue to be able to keep up with other damage-focused builds, you've got to find a way to get them a reaction attack so that they can sneak attack twice per round. And while on the one hand, I kinda like that because it forces me to get a little creative and look for fun and interesting ways to do that thing, usually through multi-classing and creative tactics, sometimes with the help of feats or spells that might let me do that. And frankly, I love approaching character creation like solving a fun and interesting puzzle, right? But it also frustrates me a bit because sometimes I don't want a multi-class. I know, that sounds really weird coming from me. Okay, fine. I pretty much always want a multi-class, but I know a lot of you don't or can't, right? And it can be frustrating to feel like if you just want to go straight rogue, your damage just isn't going to keep up with a lot of other damage-focused builds, maybe unless you've got a teammate helping you out, a battle master giving you a reaction attack, things like that. And yeah, teamwork's important, but there's no way for me to know who you're playing with and what they're doing on their turn, right? And yeah, rogues bring a ton of important and fun and cool stuff in addition to damage, and that's okay. But I suppose, actually, that my real favorite thing about this build that we've done is that it lets us get those damage numbers up there, at least eventually, with some of the heavier hitters, and bring some additional fun support and survivability options that most rogue builds can't get. But again, I kinda wish we had more ability to choose better damage than what we currently can if we wanted to by just going straight rogue, even if it meant sacrificing utility or survivability. And hey, it'd be nice if I only had to use my action, maybe my bonus action to do damage so that I could keep my reaction and use it for, well, an opportunity attack or uncanny dodge, right? And I think the best way to do that, personally, to let rogue damage scale a little better, optionally, would be by letting sneak attack scale faster. Don't give us extra attack, maybe by a d6 every rogue level? Or maybe changing it to a D8 or a D10 every 2 levels instead of a D6. Of course, if Wizards of the Coast did something like this, or you wanted to homebrew that, you'd probably have to also change it so that sneak attack really did only work on our turn though. And I, for one, would be totally fine with that, I think. In the end, this is, yeah, I think one of, if not the best rogues that I've ever built. At least at tier 2 and 3 of play and beyond anyways. That old Berserker Lurker build does outdamage this one by a smidge, but they had to make a deeper multi-class investment, were strength-based, meaning less roguish utility, right? And most damningly, I think, got a level of exhaustion after every combat encounter if they wanted to keep those numbers up. So not particularly sustainable, unless you're playing at a table that really only has one combat encounter per day most of the time. So yeah, I would take this build over that one any day of the week, I think. It sacrifices very little of what makes rogues great in the form of utility and fun and flavor, but adds a lot in the damage and support departments for a fairly small investment. And most of that is made possible to those fantastic War Priest buffs. So I certainly hope that you get to try it out someday. I certainly hope that I get to try it out someday, actually, but that's the build for the week. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you know that I love you, because I do. Thanks so much for all that you do for me and for this channel. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a fantastic day and a really great week, and if you don't, man, I hope that you will not give up. Keep going, you got this. I hope that you will do good and be kind and stay safe, and that I see you again very soon. But until then, take care. Bye-bye. Welcome me to your city of angels. Devil prophets still hold my hand. I walked your stillborn streets for hours. Who's gonna give me a weapon? A pacifying weapon. Well, they tell me that song felt a little appropriate for the theme today, I think. Pacifying weapons, devils and angels. Man, I love the Indigo Girls. I was thinking today, like, which of their albums is my favorite? I think it's got to be Rites of Passage, or maybe probably Swampophilia, but that one was off of Nomad's Indian Saints, and I just kind of realized, holy cow, I love almost all of their albums, and they're so amazing. So yeah, if you're a fan, let me know. What's your favorite? Mic is actually working. Not gonna record the video twice today. That'll be nice. Hey Siri, put yourself in airplane mode. And help me remember to do that every week before I start recording. So I don't have to always say this and then see it show up in the outtakes at the end. Don't say that, just our bonus action. But another, and that minor one, letting. Okay, everybody, it's time for some ASMR. No, say that differently. But